The views and opinions expressed by our guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of our partners, hosts, or affiliates. Our goal is to support short track racing and the dedicated men and women who make it possible, while providing entertainment for our listeners. Now, sit back, enjoy the show, and let's hear the stories.
And they made the comment to me, they said, one day you're going to wake up and realize that you spent your whole life with this racing deal and you haven't experienced anything else, you know, and you've missed out on a lot of other things. And my comment back was, yeah, but I did exactly what I wanted to do.
Look, if you fight in a pitch, you're going to jail.
Right.
If you fight on the track, the winner gets $100, the loser gets $50.
It feels like your entire season, it feels like your entire life is riding on that ride.
It was an ordeal, you know, and he was my race car friend. You know, you always say, I want to do race car things with my race car friends, you know.
I didn't realize how close the snowball came to going away.
It was very, very close. Very close. My claim to fame is I got to stop a NASCAR race for at least an hour.
It's considered the most prestigious short track race in America. And in December, the racing world will gather in Pensacola to etch their name in the history books forever.
It's the pinnacle of short track racing.
I want to know the stories. I want to hear the stories.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Short Track Shakedown, brought to you today by Blackwater Bookkeeping and Hunt the Front Super Dirt Series. I'm Josh Goodwin alongside my buddy Jake Moore. Jake, how are you, man?
Pretty good today.
Man, we have got a great show today. One of our sponsors, the Hunt the Front Super Dirt Series, we've got Joshua Joyner here with us, and he is kind of the man behind the scenes and working with the media part of it and working with the series, and I think this is going to be an awesome episode.
Yeah, I read a bunch of his articles on Dirt on Dirt when he was working with them, and I know he's been behind the scenes of this. I'm really excited to hear the story about how all this stuff coming together. I know there's a lot of speculation on it, and I can't wait to hear the details.
Absolutely. Let's get him in the room, Jake.
Let's do it.
Race fans, mark your calendar for September the 26th and the 27th, because the Hunt the Front Super Dirt Late Model Series is bringing a massive doubleheader to Southern Raceway in Milton, Florida. It's going to be historic. Series points leader and dirt late model legend Jimmy Owens is making his first ever appearance at Southern, leading a fierce title fight as the season heads into its home stretch.
Chasing him down are rising stars like Zach Mitchell and Corey Hedgecock, both also racing at Southern for the very first time. And they'll all be going wheel to wheel with local heroes like Joseph Joyner, Bo Slay, Colton Linedecker, and more, defending home turf in what's shaping up to be one of the biggest dirt late model events the Gulf Coast has ever seen.
Make plans now to join us at Southern Raceway, September the 26th and 27th. You won't want to miss it. Well, Joshua, thank you so much for making the trip up here to Molino and sitting down with us on this beautiful Sunday afternoon. Where'd you come from today?
Came from my house. So yeah, I finished watching the early afternoon football games and made the drive over. So
well, we certainly appreciate you sitting down with us
in Pace, so it wasn't too far.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. So you're living in Pace now.
I am. Yeah.
All right. Well, man, I just want to jump right into your story. Y'all have done so much for motorsports here lately, and y'all have really come on strong with the Hunt the Front series, and your YouTube channel and everything like that. I really just want to jump in and tell your story. You know, you have a very unique story with the Hunt the Front group, and tell me a little bit about your childhood and what it was like, growing up in a motorsports family prior to, all this Hunt the Front stuff.
Having listened to some of y'all's podcasts episodes you've done before, I would say it was a lot like what I hear a lot of people experience growing up in motorsports families in our area. And for me, it was going to school and we did play sports, so played ball and everything, but always looking forward to getting home and seeing what Daddy was doing in the race shop, and our uncles and cousins all raced. And my dad, John Joyner, was pretty good back in the 90s. And so I grew up going to the races with him, working in the shop some whenever my mom and dad were split. So when I was at Daddy's, that was, what we did. We worked in the race shop. When I was at my mom's, I was typical childhood playing in the street, riding bikes and playing flag football or kickball or whatever it may be. But at Daddy's, we did a lot of working on race cars. And then on the weekends, we'd go to the races and cheer him on and kind of get to be his pit crew sometimes. So, and just being a part of the racing community there. Southern Raceway, Flomaton Speedway, Baker, which Northwest Florida Speedway. We always call it Baker. Every now and then we'd go over to the old Loxley track.
LA Raceway, yeah.
And then every now and then we'd go, go off somewhere like Phoenix City, East Alabama, or a big race up there or something. So
I would have loved to have been able to see Phoenix City like in its heyday back in the late 90s, early 2000s. I bet you that was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what our first experience with the more, bigger scene of late model racing was, we used to get the Dirt Late Model magazine, or National Dirt Digest. So we'd always read those and read about the guys winning all the races, Scott Bloomquist and, all the big names back in the 90s, Rick Eckert, Steve Francis, Clint Smith, and Ronnie Johnson were big in the Southeast. And so for us, I always tell the story, the National 100 in East Alabama was pretty cool because that's when we got to go see those guys.
Right.
Yeah, you read about them, and every now and then you might see a Have a Tampa race on TV, right? A replay. And, you get to see those guys, and then you'd go watch them in person was pretty cool. And really some really good memories there at East Alabama. And I don't remember the years or anything like that, but I was saying for us in the mid to late 90s going up there, and sometimes we just go as fans, and sometimes we'd go and Dad would race in the Super Street or Sportsman class, whatever he was running at the time. So it was always a pretty cool trip, and that was the big time for us back then, was going to be a part of that. So
I remember that was always the racetrack for a big race, before Why Not and all these other tracks.
I was going to say it was before, the Street Stock Nationals and Why Not had big races, and even before Magnolia was built. Talladega, we went up there a couple times, and
the Ice Bowl.
Yeah. We never went to the Ice Bowl till later on. Like growing up, I remember hearing about the Ice Bowl, but usually my dad was a big hunter. So yeah, he was too distracted. Exactly. So we didn't really start thinking about racing till, Winter Nationals. And
I've always said there's a reason hunting season starts about the time racing season ends.
It's the perfect transition. Not a big hunter myself, but I obviously, grew up around it. And, but I was going to say, like we said, we would go to Talladega every now and then when they'd have a big show. And, but really the home tracks were Southern Raceway. We grew up, our house where we grew up, most of our family lives out in East Milton's. It's probably, when you got to go around the highway, probably less than 5 miles, right at 5 miles, I guess, from the track. But, as a crow flies, only a couple miles at most. So you can hear the race cars from the house there growing up if we weren't out at the track, or if someone was out there practicing or something, making laps, we would know about it because you could hear them. So we grew up going to Southern a lot, and, and watching my dad, John Joyner, race, and Jody Joyner, my cousin, and Michael Porter was my uncle, watching him and those guys race. So a lot of good memories there.
Absolutely. Did you go to Milton High School?
I did. Went to Milton High School, graduated in 05, born and raised in Milton. Went there, I played sports growing up, so I didn't get, Jonathan got into racing really young. I think he was 13. He started running a hog car.
Yeah.
And actually we built the car together, and kind of grew up around it. And I think it was an old Nova we got for Christmas or our birthday one year, and it needed a lot of work, right? It was just an old car, but we built it.
That was the exciting part about it, probably.
It was, I'll be honest, I'll go and preface, this is I'm the reason I don't race and I'm more behind the scenes and do the business stuff is I am not a big fan of the working in the shop. So I've never claimed to be a gearhead or to like working on cars. I don't mind it, but it was never something that I really enjoyed, and wanted to do. And growing up around that time, I played sports. I was really big into baseball and football, and even played basketball. I played all three in high school.
Oh, wow.
And well, until everyone grew and I didn't. Me and 5'5" and barely 120 pounds, trying to play football. I kind of called it quits there, but growing up, Jonathan was more into the racing and spent more time in the shop, and I spent more time. I would go whenever I had free time and I wasn't playing a sport. But that's kind of where our paths diverged a little bit.
Right.
But I do remember getting that car when he got that car. I want to say it was like right before our 13th birthday or something. I can't remember exactly because we're twins.
Right.
But anyway, I remember we worked on it and beat all the glass out of it, ripped all the interior out. And, Daddy had, I can't remember if he had who built the roll cage, but, put a roll cage in it. I remember going to Hood's junkyard and getting parts we needed to fix it up.
Yeah.
And in fact, it might've been where it came from, to be honest, the car. But anyway, that was, and then Daddy built us you know, out at Joinerville, our family property, there was a big field out behind it that we used to go ride 4-wheelers and dirt bikes and stuff. And Daddy kind of put 2 barrels out and kind of used his tractor. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't much of a track. It was literally like going out in the field and running a car around 2 barrels. And we made some laps. And, you know, I remember working a lot with Jonathan and helping him. But then when it came time to race, it was about, you know, race season started about the time baseball season started. Yeah. And so I was, you know, I went with him, but I wasn't, he was doing all the work. And so he did the driving. But yeah, that was, like I said, went to Milton High, I can remember trying to, the decision between going out with friends or hanging out and going to a party or whatever versus going to the racetrack. Right. And, you know, and at that age, you know, when you get 16, you start driving, that's sometimes a tough decision to make.
100%.
But I will say I stayed out of trouble in high school, never really got into much trouble. And I would say probably was because I spent most of my free time, if it wasn't, you know, at a baseball game or a football game, playing sports, then I was at a racetrack, you know, in the race shop or at the racetrack. Yep. So, you know, I think it was a good thing looking back. And even then, like I said, I wasn't racing myself till later on, I think 17 when I first started racing. So, but yeah, it was a good time, good memories. Jonathan kind of really, you know, he was the driver of the 2 of us and really kind of took off and did pretty well. I mean, back then, you know, he was, kind of got into it when, I mean, it was kind of weird that he was 13 and racing. Right now, it's, you know, it's pretty normal, common, right? Like, you know, and I remember him, we were at the racetrack and it was like 2 or 3 races in, or maybe halfway through his first season. And like, he is the only kid, you know, 13-year-old really out there racing. I think maybe, Jason Phillips was maybe 14 or 15 when he started, you know, and he had been doing it a couple of years at that point. He's a little older than us. I remember we saw Calvin Cook out there, and like he was about our age, and it's like, who is this kid? Like, you're not the only kid anymore. Which I think he's, you know, a little older than us, but it was kind of funny. Like, I feel like we were, and I say we, but Jonathan and you know, was one of the, like, then really you started seeing the young kids getting into it, right? But before that, it was really unusual to see you know, a 13 or even 14-year-old racing full size, you know, car. So I guess it was pretty cool to see that transition to where we are now, where we've got 12-year-olds racing late models, you know?
And it is, you know, and they keep getting younger.
Yeah.
And the bad part about it is they're good.
They're good. Yeah.
They're good. They're doing a fantastic job.
Yeah. Yeah.
A little off topic, but something made me think of that. You know how many people ask me about, man, what kind of license do you got to get to go race? Or what do you got to do?
You don't. You can get insurance. That's I guess sometimes the hold up for some of those young kids is if who's covering, you know, insurance, right? And as being on both sides of it, you know, you just got to make sure I'm sure there's sometimes that's not checked. But and a lot of times those young guys, like when they come run with us and the late models, they have their own insurance type deal. So, but yeah, it is pretty cool to see it and crazy that they can, you know, 4 years before being, you know, legal to get a license, you know, driver's license, they can be driving a race car at a really high level.
Well, and not having any kind of form of ID. I know quite a few that maybe told some fibs about their age.
Yep. I can imagine.
Oh yeah.
Well, Joshua, so Jonathan obviously was running, but when did you actually start racing? Tell me about that.
So I started racing. So Jonathan, like I said, was running the hog class back in, you know, when I think that would have been the early 2000s, I guess, 2001, something like that. And so he kind of came up through the ranks in hog, and I, like I said, I drove it a little bit, like in the quote unquote test track we had. I think I might have drove it one time at Baker, just got in it after the races or something, but I didn't actually race. He came up, and the reason I never, like, kind of the idea was like, if he moved up, you know, I might get the car and hand me down, but he always wrecked them, was why. So like every time he had the chance, like the hog cars he had, and then he moved up to street stock and won a lot. And, you know, he would move up because, like, he wrecked the hog car,
and we're gonna build a new one.
Yeah, exactly.
Move up.
And that happened in hobby. But when he moved up from hobby to late model, was because our cousin Jody, you know, had family and was kind of getting out of it, and our uncle Lamar, his dad, you know, wanted to still race, and he had a car sitting there, the old blue 24 car. Y'all might remember late model.
I do remember that.
Yeah, and so Jonathan had been running pretty well in hobby, and I think we were 16. And so he had moved up and it really was focusing on the late model. And that year, the hobby car was, you know, just sitting there, not being ran. And it's like, you know, I remember, you know, baseball season ended. And so I think it was in the summer that year, I got to race a little bit. And so my first race was in the hobby division, which, probably talking 2003, I think, maybe four.
Was it still popular back then?
It was still a really big division. And
that was a good class to cut your teeth in.
Well, not to start in, but
sarcastically.
But I can remember I was halfway competitive when I started, and I remember running pretty well in my heat race. And back then, Sean Goodwin was really the guy to beat. And him and Jonathan at the time. And Jonathan had, like I said, they'd had a little rivalry going, and Jonathan had kind of moved on. And anyway, I just remember every time I'd watch Jonathan, that was the car he was trying to beat. And Sean, I think they still had the start the back rule back then.
Yep. Yeah, if you win, yeah.
If you win. And so Sean had to start the back of the feature that night. And I'm cruising along, doing pretty good, probably running 7th or 8th or something like that. And feeling like, man, not that bad.
Time. Yeah.
And that was back, you still race back to the caution back then. And I remember not having thought about it, like at the start of the race, at some point Sean's going to pass me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I hadn't thought about it in a while. And all of a sudden there's a caution, racing back to the caution. And I feel a little bump and get kind of bumped up out of the groove. And Sean goes by, coming to the caution. So I'm restarting right behind him. And I'm like, he just bumping around me. Yeah. I'm about to do the same thing. And it turns out Sean Goodwin is a lot better at the bump and run than a guy who's, in his first race was. And
wasn't as easy as you thought it was.
No, and I took him out. Like, I think it was, we get through 1 and 2, and you know how it is. Southern Raceways, that's where it was at Southern.
Mm-hmm.
And it's,
bottom dominant.
And everyone's in the bottom, and I'm going to root him up out of there. And like I said, I totally misjudged it, spun him out, got the black flag. So in my first competitive race, first time actually racing, I spun out Sean Goodwin and got black flag. So, but I promise, I don't remember if there was anything said or whatever, but I promise I didn't mean to. I was just kind of trying to bump him and smooth took him out. But yeah, from there I drove the hobby car a little bit. A few times. I don't remember if I ever won a race or anything. I don't think I did in the hobby division. It was kind of an afterthought, and because Jonathan was running the late model. But then Jonathan and my dad bought a late model for Jonathan to drive. So Lamar's car was just, again, no one there to drive it. The old GRT, same car. Yeah. It was a 97 GRT. And this would have been my senior year of high school. I remember that spring, starting out the season, I had only ran like a handful of times in the hobby car, and Jonathan had moved on to our equipment, my dad's car, and so Lamar was like, "You want to drive my car?" And I'm like, "Are you sure?" I literally had like 4 or 5, maybe 6 hobby races, and started that next year. It was then limited late model, I think.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't remember if it was limited or super. I can't remember. I think it was limited. I can't remember.
That was like the steel-headed motors. Yeah.
I think it was. No, I'll take it back. It wasn't limited. They had gone to supers every week at Southern because they kind of bounced back and forth between the steel heads to supers, and they'd gone back to supers in 2005. But I was driving. My car had a limited motor in it, and I was running my limited motor with the supers, and
which those supers weren't nothing like.
No, it was. I mean,
it was a local super
class.
Right.
Exactly.
It's totally different.
Shep Lucas had a really nice, car and motor with, that was about, I heard his episode. It was about the time, he was really getting some sponsorship and went and bought a Track Star. I feel like it had a J Dickens motor in it. So we were trying to compete with him with, a 97 GRT. I remember I did win a race that year. Actually, no, I take that back. The first year I did not win a race. Had a couple second place finishes. And then the next year, this tells you how, not advanced our super division was back then.
Mm-hmm.
They started running crates around here. Mm-hmm. And so we got a crate motor, and Lamar said, we ran a few crate races. And Lamar actually made me stay with the crate motor running the supers.
Okay.
And I ran better and actually won I won a race. I won the first ever crate race at Southern. It was like a one-off race. They gave the supers a break one week, and I had been running the crate. And so we just kept it in there, and I won it that night. And then the next week came back and won the super race with the crate.
Traction's an amazing thing.
I mean, it was and then I didn't win another race the whole year, but that was like my it was a big deal to win 2 back to back. Won the first ever crate race at Southern.
Oh, I bet you're on top of the world.
I was, and then they'll come back and actually win the super race, beat Jonathan, beat Shep.
Okay.
And again, it's Southern. It's one line. I got out. You drew. Like, they didn't. I don't think we qualified. I don't remember if we qualified or not. But somehow I got out front and just, made 15 or 20, however many laps we ran, smooth laps in the rubber and didn't mess up.
Stay in the black.
Yeah, that's it. Stay in the black.
Do you own a small business? Do you know how much profit you made last month? Do you know what your biggest expense was last month? Do you even know that you need to know these things? Well, you need to call Blackwater Bookkeeping if you didn't answer yes to any of those questions. Steph at Blackwater Bookkeeping can help you figure out where your money's going and where it's coming from and help you strategize your business in the best way based on the numbers. Numbers don't lie.
She can also get you ready for next year's tax season and be ahead of the game instead of behind the 8 ball. Give her a call today at 850-290-3043.
And remember, whether it's startups or cleanups, Steph can get it done.
But yeah, that was then the next year. We went to pretty much all crates around here.
Mm-hmm.
It had transitioned to mostly crates. We ran what they call it, the Neesmith weekly points, ran that. I mean, we raced every week Baker and Southern, and every now and then we go to Deep South if Southern rained out. And I remember it was really close, and I won 6 races, I think, that year, and Jonathan won like 8, and he finished 5th in the national Neesmith points, and I finished 6th. He beat me. Like, it was, obviously we were competing against everybody, but we were really trying to beat each other. and he beat me. And
that's what makes racing fun.
Yeah. There's always something to keep you going, keep you motivated. And, it was, and not just him, but that was a really good division when the crate division, took off, and they were running them weekly at Baker and Southern. Shep would run it, when he wasn't doing a super race, and he would run it. Frank Wilson had a crate. I feel like Larry Boutwell would run it some. There was always a good field, pretty much every week at both tracks. And then you're also racing, you're not only racing 15 good cars here, and that night you're also competing against points against the guys from, up in Georgia, over in Louisiana and Mississippi. So it was always cool watching to see, how when they would do the press release and have all the results from all the other tracks, and one, seeing your name on it and seeing where you were in the points, but also seeing how everybody else did.
Well, IMCA like that, and I ran a little bit with IMCA this year, and when I remember I'd be in the office on the computer, but let me go check and just see where it's at. I'd be way at the bottom, but it's cool to scroll down and see your name pop up on there.
Yeah, that was. That was. I think that was 2007 was the year we really ran a lot of crate. Me and Jonathan both. And also was the last year I ran, because we had started college at UWF, and just was getting out of hand. Lamar had kind of gotten out of it, and so I was
only got so much bandwidth.
Yeah, that was get to the point that as a kid racing, that's one thing with us growing up, racing, whether it was just Jonathan or when we were both racing, like we had to work on the cars, right? Like it was
you got to maintain them.
Yeah, you got to maintain them. If you tear something up, you're gonna be working all night, or after school you're going in the shop working to fix it. Kind of learn a mentality of racing, of trying not to wreck, because you don't want to have to,
work on
financially,
it
but also
if you're fixing it, you can't make it faster.
But then at some point, I think, you get to, as an adult, as you get to be a little bit older, they're also not only the actual work, but also the financial burden.
Yep.
It's like, how much can, your parents afford to pay? And at that time, Jonathan was still racing, and he'd had a guy that was, helping him, some other folks. And so, but Daddy was still supporting that quite a bit. And Joseph was coming up, getting started. And Joseph at that point was like 12 starting. And so I kind of saw the writing on the wall, and I didn't have the money. I was trying to go to college and working, part-time at AutoZone, and I didn't, getting to the point, I didn't have the time to do that and race, but certainly didn't have the money, and kind of knew that, okay, this was, and then you start to realize that those dreams of making it big, and, going to NASCAR, or being at top level of dirt, like, are not as attainable as you thought as a kid,
I can remember racing was awesome when my grandpa was footing the bill.
Exactly.
And when he cut it off, it got
like, how
a lot harder.
Yeah. So I got out of it, and decided to pursue more of a, I still wanted to be involved in racing. So I decided, I remember being at the computer lab at UWF, my sophomore year there, my second year there, and having an epiphany in the computer lab on the computer, researching jobs, like career fields, right? And somehow I was like, what could you do to work in racing, and make it, because, like NASCAR, right? It's there. And somehow I ended up on the World Outlaws Late Model Series website, and they had a job opening for a public relations director.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, what is that?
Yeah.
I read the job, and it's, basically you're writing about it and providing the news, right? Back then we didn't have social media. You're right, providing the content, writing about the races, sending out the press release about the, feature stories on the drivers, race reports, all that stuff. maintaining the series website. And I'm like,
and that's the only way people had to get that information back then. There was no flow or nothing.
You didn't just go on My Race Pass or social media or whatever. Like, you know, each series, if they did it right, had a website and would send out press releases that would go in the Dirt Late Model magazine, National Dirt Digest, Dirt on Dirt when it came about. You know, and if the local papers that would cover racing, you know, they would have those. And so I immediately, literally left that computer lab and went to, and I looked it up. UWF has public relations as its as a major choice. And I went to the advisor for that, the department head, and like asked, like, I want this job. I printed it off, took it to her. I remember Miss Perigo was her name, Eileen Perigo, became a kind of a mentor for me. But anyway, she's like, absolutely. This major is what you need to do, is the perfect major for that job and a career in motorsports media, basically. And she knew Gordon Paulus, who was former sports editor for the Pensacola News Journal for a long time. At that time, he had moved on from the News Journal and was the public relations director for Gulf Power at the time. But she knew him and was like, I got the perfect person that you could kind of learn from. And because he was, you know, after getting out of the newspaper business, he was a race fan, and he was still writing he would go to the races at Five Flags and would write like the race report that would go in the Pensacola News Journal and write stories about the drivers. He was still reporting, you know, he was like kind of the beat reporter is what you would call it for Five Flags as kind of a hobby after leaving the newspaper. But anyway,
before you had the epiphany, did you have a direction you were going, or
construction? I was going to do construction,
okay. And construction management, or
there was a major at UWF. I think it was it's called construction engineering, but it was really more of a construction management deal. And I had
something you kind of wanted to do, and then you found what you really wanted to do.
There was two reasons I switched my major, not because I really wanted to do that, but also because I had spent the summer interning for a construction company out that, you know, did big commercial construction and out on the beach, did big condos.
Kind of like Bear or something like that?
It was McBride Construction. I'm not even sure if they're still around.
I've heard that name.
And I hated it.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is not the job field, career path I want to go down. You know, I didn't go into it, but me and my dad butted heads a lot, still do. And I knew I didn't want to work for him, and kind of not that. I can really relate to that. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I just knew it wasn't a good, you know, I need to go do my own thing. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it was
family
his fault.
And business is hard to make happen.
And anyway, so construction. But I had realized that I did not want to do construction, you know, for the rest of my life. And at the time, I thought construction and growing a construction business, that was my goal, was to, you know, to maybe take over my grandpa on my mom's side. He built houses and stuff, and maybe work with him and be a builder, but also be able to fund, you know, racing. But then I decided I didn't want to do that. So maybe I'll try to work in racing. And that's where I got that itch or that idea. So I switched my major to public relations, and that next summer I interned. I was actually during the spring, I started going out to Five Flags and basically covering the races for the News Journal under Gordon, and eventually took over because he was looking to get out of it, and eventually took over for him.
So elaborate a little bit on that, about working with the Pensacola News Journal and stuff like that. How does, you know, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of events that go on in the Pensacola area and especially on the Gulf Coast. But is that like an actual, hey, I'm going to go to the Pensacola News Journal office and I'm going to sit down and write, or is it kind of a freelance kind of a deal?
So I've never went to the Pensacola News Journal office. No, it was the way it worked for me, and like every industry, it's evolved, and I don't even know what it's like anymore for print newspaper. I don't even know if that is print. I haven't seen a print copy of the Pensacola News Journal in years. I don't even know if I assume they might still make them.
They still do it. My grandpa reads it every morning.
So, but back then, we would. So what I would do is so the way a typical week would work for me, as you know, when I was being the public relations guy for Five Flag Speedway / the racing correspondent for the Pensacola News Journal, is, you know, if there was a race coming up at Five Flags, me and I would talk to Tim Bryant and kind of come up with an idea of a driver we should, you know, that he wanted to kind of highlight, right? Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of interesting stories. You know, you'd have the Johanna Long was the big thing in the late models, pro late model and super late model.
A lot of human interest pieces,
But you had, I remember I wrote a story about Billy Hoover racing and running a racetrack, right? Like, cause he was getting Southern going or was getting going at Southern, running it, but also racing at Five Flags, like all kinds of stories. But I would, and I would call the driver or maybe have them come to the track, but usually I would just call them, and interview them and get quotes and get their story and then sit down and write it. Yeah. Right. And that would go, I would usually do that, Monday or Tuesday. And by Thursday, I was supposed to have it to Bill Valona, was the sports editor at the News Journal. I was supposed to have it to him by noon on Thursday, so I had plenty of time to edit and make it fit.
Right.
But I learned that deadline was really was 9:00 on weeknights. So sometimes if I had a busy workload with school and I was still working, I was working in part time at AutoZone then, and so I might get a little behind. But no, for me it was I would write the story, and it was really cool seeing it in the newspaper.
So you would just send it to the editor,
yeah,
and they would do the rest of it.
Yeah, and they would make it fit. Because I had usually it was given a word length, right? Yep. It might be 500 words one week. It might be
whatever room they had on the page.
Yeah, and they kind of would project what they thought they might have, and then there might be some huge breaking news in sports that would cut it down to literally just a blurb.
Yep.
Right. But usually they were. It was really cool. They went a lot out of the way to make sure they got some coverage and.
Are they still doing that?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't.
I know Chuck Quarter's doing some stuff, but I didn't know if the News Journal was actually still covering anything like that.
I don't know. It's a good question. I haven't.
Every now and then, my grandpa leave the paper on the table, and I'll look at it, and there's hardly ever anything about local racing in there now.
And a lot of it has to do with, especially now, and even at that point, it was really budgets were tightening for print journalism quite a bit. Like newspapers, in their heyday had. Plenty of money, plenty of budgets, could have a full-time racing reporter.
And probably had minimal competition.
Right. Now, and certainly at that point, they were relying on, if the track didn't, and that's why Tim Bryant was really smart to kind of cultivate someone to do the coverage for them. Because if the track, they didn't have someone, they didn't have the staff to send them every Friday night or every other Friday night.
Tried.
Yeah. Or to do a story during the week. So, that was smart of Tim, and I'm sure he still does a lot of his own PR, if you will, or make sure it gets done by having someone do it. But for me, it was always really cool. I can remember because I'd have to go into to AutoZone. I didn't have classes on Friday, so I'd have to be at AutoZone at like 6:00 in the morning, or whatever, 6:45 to open at 7. I would always get the newspaper on the way, and I would have, and I remember showing my bosses there, like, yeah, I wrote that. Like, that's me. It's got my name on it. And then I would go Friday night, I'd get off work. I'd go, go back home for a little bit, whatever. And then I would go Friday night to the races, get out there Friday afternoon and would, write about, whatever happened at the races. And that was fun because, we were on deadline, right? I think the deadline on Friday nights, because you also had Friday night football or stuff you might have too. So they pushed the deadline back a little bit, but we had 10:15 deadline, I feel like was the time. Whatever it was always like we had 15 minutes to write a story, right? Like whatever.
You're basically typing on the go, ready to rock and roll.
Ready to go. You're like, I remember that was the first few times I went, right? Really during that whole spring I went before the summer, I was going and Gordon was kind of teaching me, right? And I can remember my first time doing it myself, and I almost freaked out because it's like, I don't remember exactly what happened, but I remember it was like, I'm not going to beat deadline. I'm not going to make deadline. And Gordon's like, I never miss deadline, right? Like, he's like, we get something, unless there's a rain delay or something, like we make deadline. And I remember freaking out, but still got it done. And sometimes you would just send like, it would not be a great story, but then you would rely on the editor, whoever you would hope they could
piece it together.
Yeah, piece it together, or at least make it halfway coherent. But I learned a lot. Like that was, I just really learned a lot about how to write, how to report.
Getting experience.
I was a pretty good reporter. I feel like, like in those early days at Five Flags, and learning from Gordon and Bill at the News Journal, he would always provide me some feedback, and he would come for like the big races,
Bill
Valona, was his name. He was the actual sports editor.
Okay.
I don't know what he's doing now, but I learned from some really good people, and Tim would provide feedback and everything too.
I think you're doing good because I've read some of your Dirt on Dirt stuff, which I know we'll talk about, and I've always enjoyed it.
So I got a question. When you're doing those human interest pieces, and this is something that I'm trying to learn doing this podcast, when you're talking to these people, how do you develop your line of questioning, like in the, because you don't get a whole lot of time with that driver, you know what I mean? And we did a deal at Why Not a couple weeks ago, and the product turned out halfway decent, but I felt like it could have been a lot better. You know what I mean? So when you're, and obviously journalism is a little bit different than sitting down and recording something live, but how did you structure what you were going to ask? And did you ask everybody pretty much the same questions just so you could have a synopsis of what, you know what I mean? How did that work?
For me, and I learned this, I went on to write for dirtondirt.com and worked for the World of Outlaws later on. But, so I don't know when. I can't, obviously wasn't good at it to begin with. But for me, I would try to have as much of the story written before I interviewed them. Okay. I know that sounds crazy, but, there's a reason, if we picked Johanna Long, right, just to give her, because I remember I covered her a lot. Like she, that was a big deal. Yeah, she was, the big thing then. And obviously, the track wanted to promote something that was, wanted to
different,
not different, but
hometown
hero. She's a female against the guys. It's getting interest. It's going to get people to the track. Right. There's all about what's going to be a human interest that not only is an interesting story, but it's going to get people to come to that race on Friday. Right. And so anyway, I kind of, you would know what the story was, right? Like, why is this person significant? Why, if they've won 4 out of the last 5, they've moved up from one division to the other and are doing really well, or trying to remember some specific examples. They had maybe they had a heart condition and had to take off racing. Now they're getting back into it. So you kind of can, write the story, or at least have it outlined,
have an idea of where
you're going with it.
And then you fill in the blanks with the stuff you get from the driver.
Yes. And then you use their quotes and their information to fill in the blanks and then sometimes you may stumble on something just from the interview that you didn't think, and it changes the story completely. But usually that was, for me, was kind of knowing what you needed to get from the driver or the person that you're interviewing to make it an interesting story, right? Already kind of knowing their background as much as you can. Again, researching ahead of time if you can, and knowing what you want to ask them to have a good story whenever it's said and done.
I got you. That's cool. Winter is over. Racing season is in full bloom, and hurricane season is only weeks away. Don't wait till Jim Cantori shows up on Pensacola Beach to make sure that your house is hurricane ready. You need to give Window World of Pensacola a call. We specialize in impact and non-impact rated windows, but our impact line is what you need for the upcoming hurricane season. Give us a call today at 850-484-9998 or come by the office at 10108 North Palafox Street. Well, man, where did you go after you got done doing that? Obviously, you're still in college, majoring in public relations with UWF, but what did you do after college?
So I remember, I can't remember what, I remember again in the computer lab, and I knew I'd already had an internship, because you had to have an internship for credit to graduate. And that was the first summer I was going to say, I worked on my own at Five Flags, was a 4-credit internship. But there wasn't many jobs, right? Like it was 2009, the recession had, there was just not much opportunity. And so I knew I was going to, but I wanted to get my foot in the door. And at that point, I thought to make a living in media, whether it's a reporter or public relations, I thought you had to go to NASCAR, right? Like that was, big time, right? Like that would be the only way to make a living, and no one makes a living in dirt track racing.
Organization that had enough money to do something like that.
And so I remember I was looking for internships, and that's how they said you get your foot in the door. I was going to do another internship and try to get some experience, make connections, whatever, in the NASCAR world. And Tim knew some people, and kind of steered me in the direction of, I thought the Speed 51 was a big thing back then. And I talked with them about if I could get to Charlotte, they'd use me as a reporter, but they didn't have anything like, full time or anything. But ended up applying just randomly for a internship at was then Lowe's Motor Speedway, obviously Charlotte Motor Speedway now, as in their communications department, essentially doing the same thing for their events, for the NASCAR events, for the summer shootout deal they do with the Bandoleros and Legend cars, and other events as well that they do, monster trucks, all kinds of stuff, and got an internship there the summer of 2009. And so I graduated early May of 2009, graduated from UWF, and like a week later moved to North Carolina. I had an aunt and uncle that lived about an hour from the track. A great aunt and uncle, and so went and stayed with them and drove almost an hour every day and worked. It was full time. I mean, they pay you a $500 stipend at the end of it, but work you full time in the communications department at Lowe's Motor Speedway.
Okay.
So that was I remember I got there on like a Wednesday, and Thursday night was the first night, or Friday night, whatever. Like 2 nights. I had one night to actually sleep and, have a normal, settle in and get a good night's sleep. And then it kicked off the All-Star race.
So you had to get your feet wet quick.
Like, I remember they
through the wolves, really.
Yeah, and they brought me up there to start a week early than most interns because they needed extra help in the media department, in the media center in the infield during that event. There was a dirt track race. That was the next week before the Coke 600. They had a World Outlaw sprint car and fast track crate late model race at the dirt track in conjunction.
I was
like
going
on
to
a
ask
Thursday night.
if you covered the dirt track too.
That was always cool to get to go and
was
do
the drag
something
strip
dirt track
at that point.
It was.
Did you do anything?
Bellagio of drag strips.
Oh yeah, that place is awesome.
It was. I mean, I have some really cool stories or experiences from that, but one of the coolest from my internship. And you're an intern, right? You don't really. It's
bottom of the totem pole.
Is they were having a big event. They were doing what do you call it? Why can't I think? A press conference kind of deal ahead of the big drag strip race, NHRA race that was coming in there later that year, the 4 Wide Nationals, whatever they call it. And they had John Force come and do an appearance and answer some questions, and just it was kind of
that's a ball of energy right there.
Well, it's so funny is he walks in and I never, I'm not a big drag racing person, right? But everyone knows who John Force is if you're in racing. But anyway, he walks in and he just walks straight over to me, like into the building there. Hey, I got any coffee? And he's got that scratchy voice or whatever. And I looked at my my boss, who I'm like, I don't think we do. She's like, go to Starbucks, get him coffee. Anyway, so I literally leave the press conference to go get coffee, a large coffee, venti, whatever you call it, for John Force.
No doubt.
That's cool.
He said, black, nothing in it. Quick as you can get to me, the better. And anyway, and brought him a coffee from the Starbucks. So that was
cool.
That's how I got to know John Force.
That's funny as heck.
That's awesome. I think the drag strip was new.
It might have been the first one that they were getting ready for.
I think it was the first 4 wide track they built, wasn't it?
I don't remember. I just remember it being a big deal. Again, I never went to an event there. I saw they had a couple, car there making a couple passes, which was, if you've never stood near a drag strip whenever a funny car or Top Fuel takes off, it is wild, like heart pounding, literally.
Make your heart skip a beat.
And that, I got to see a few of those. Got to take one of the speedway cars down the track, down the drag strip. But I don't really remember. I didn't do an event there, like an actual race when I was there.
So I was told, I never got to go to one too when I lived up there, but everybody I talked to said that whenever they went 4 wide with the Top Fuel cars, that the motors were sucking so much air, like it would almost suck the air out of your lungs.
I could imagine, because again, all I saw was one car, one pass at a time,
right.
And it about it kind of did that, right?
Right.
Like I could, with 4 of them, I could only imagine, but yeah, no, I was again, not being a drag racing guy, it was still really cool, a cool experience.
You respect all kind of racing,
absolutely,
really.
Yeah.
So after the internship with Charlotte Motor Speedway and everything, what did you kind of transition to into there?
So while interning at Charlotte, I reached out to dirtondirt.com, and so I wanted to keep riding, right? Like Charlotte,
you were enjoying it.
Charlotte didn't have, I would work there at the track Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 job, right? Like most of the time they would have their events, like the Tuesday nights was the summer shootout. And every now and then you'd have a weekend event we had to be at to help with. There was like 2 or 3 of us interns there that were, we'd kind of split it up and do, take whichever we needed. And I was always trying to get the weekends off. I didn't care about the car show, and it was a big deal, whatever. I can't remember what it's called, or but they have a really big one there.
I went to one of them. Yeah.
Yeah. But all the other stuff, there's something going on there all the time, but I always try to get the weekends off so I could go to the local, to the dirt tracks. You had Carolina Speedway in Gastonia, North Carolina was, another
East Lincoln.
Cherokee was the big one for me. It was another couple hours south or hour and 45 minutes, I think. I can't remember exactly, south of the track.
I remember we went there and watched Scott Bloomquist. I can't remember who all else came there. Me and Brandon Seidner, we found a dirt track to go to every weekend too. So.
Absolutely. So I would go and there was I got in with a local newspaper, dirt, short track paper that I would write for. Speed 51, you know, they told me, well, if you want to go to Concord or wherever these other pavement tracks, and I was like, really?
Hickory.
Hickory. I was like, I want to go to the dirt tracks. And they're like, well, all right, well, we'll run it, but we don't really do dirt track stuff. So I you know, dirtondirt.com was the, you know, they
were getting big.
They were really growing and, you know, getting a lot of coverage. But so I reached out to them about, you know, if I could freelance, you know, for the races in that area, and they jumped right on it. And I think like
that's awesome.
The weekend after the Coke 600, I was going to Cherokee to cover a, you know, Southern All-Stars race or something there. And at that time you had, you know, Jonathan Davenport, Chris Madden, Freddie Smith was still racing. You know, Chris Ferguson was just coming on, Dennis Rambo Franklin, like, you know, guys, some of them going on to be, you know, Jonathan Davenport, you know, one of the greatest, you know, probably the greatest ever, you know, could end up being, you know, debate there, but you know, it's really a healthy, you know, and they were racing there like once a month, a big show, right? So,
well, that whole place is just eats, sleeps, and breathes racing.
Yeah,
all
exactly. Of motorsports.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I, you know, spent a lot of time at Cherokee Speedway, again, Carolina Speedway, 311 Motor Speedway, I think, was up north of Charlotte there. I went to a couple times for Carolina Clash races, but that got my foot in the door at Dirt on Dirt.
I believe East Lincoln was owned by Ray Evernham, wasn't it?
I think he did. And funny story is I never went there to East Lincoln. Yeah, funny. I just never.
It's a small track.
They didn't have late models.
Yeah, so well, it was too small for late models. It was inside and outside wall, and it wasn't very wide.
The same guy that was leasing and promoting Carolina operated East Lincoln for Ray Evernham. He's Clint Elkins, I think was his name. But anyway, I got to know him a little bit.
That was like a Bowman Gray on dirt, when I remember it.
But I kept telling him, you need to run late models there. You need to run late models. And he wouldn't do it. But anyway, so yeah, that got my foot in the door at Dirt on Dirt. Basically, just like I was for the Pensacola News Journal, I was going to the races, reporting on the races, sending them sidebar, what we call sidebar stories or notebooks on, you know, the different stuff that would happen in the area and news and all that. Then the World Finals was a big deal then. Still is, obviously. World Outlaws World Finals at the dirt track. And the first year in 2009, they used me as their lead reporter for the World Finals. You know, Dirt on Dirt did. So that was a pretty cool experience. And I had stayed. My internship had finished, and I decided I wanted to stay in Charlotte to try to, you know, continue on
that going,
in my career. And sometime at that point, like I realized that, man, if I keep doing a good job, maybe they'll just hire me at Dirt on Dirt, because I was writing a lot, you know, for them and going to a lot of races. And we had a conversation about it, me and Michael Rigsby, who would eventually become my boss, the founder of Dirt on Dirt. I remember at Charlotte that year, we talked about maybe within the next year, you know, maybe being able to hire me full time.
That's awesome.
And I had to take another job. I think I worked facility maintenance, housekeeping, basically management for a company that had contracted with hospitals, and kind of got moved around a few different hospitals in the area. And then they wanted
something to pay the bills.
Yeah, pretty much. It was a good job. Like it was, way more than I was going to make, in the dirt track business, and had benefits and healthcare and all that.
But it wasn't a dream.
Well, they moved me to Virginia, with that, I took the job in Charlotte, kind of in a training program, and they said, you'll be within, a couple hours of Charlotte. And my fiance, now wife, had moved up there, and she had a decent job. And they moved me to Virginia. And before I went full time with Dirt on Dirt, I actually had a chance to work for Fast Track, which was kind of similar to Crate USA, kind of sanctioned body, did, for Crate late models. And so I had that opportunity. And as soon as they moved me to Virginia with the housekeeping company, hospital company, I got, that opportunity came along, got out of Virginia as quick as I could. But eventually I kind of knew all along that the job with Dirt on Dirt was probably going to open up. And I think about a year after that, I think the next World Finals was when I started full time. So it'd have been 2011, I think, is when I started full time with Dirt on Dirt as a reporter. So, and that was kind of,
was it like a dream come true? Or was it just like
it was at first. Mm-hmm. And then, I think the first year I did something like 112 races.
Which that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot of travel.
It was. I did all but like 2 races on the Summer Nationals that year.
Wow.
Think
about how easy that job would have been with something like Hunt the Front TV series, or like Flow Now or whatever. You wouldn't have had to actually been there.
So that was the thing. Like they don't even send reporters much anymore. They do the bigger events, and they're not, but when I started with Dirt on Dirt, that's why they hired me. Is if they didn't have a reporter to send, that you might not even get results. Right? There was no My Race Pass. You know, like there were you know, series
pre-technology.
And they wouldn't even post, like they wouldn't update their website for like a week. Right. And that was Dirt on Dirt was the news source. Right. So their goal was to get, and so even when I wasn't going to races, I would, you know, that was what we did was basically scour the internet for the results to post and have on dirtondirt.com.
So that was one of the ideas we were going to do as podcast was update people on the local tracks here. Yeah. But that would mean we'd have to be at all of them at the same time.
Say,
There's
it's
only
nearly
2 of us.
impossible.
Right.
But yeah, nowadays, back to your, you know, point, like most of it can be done. You can do it remotely. You know, you can get the quotes from the interviews after the race. You know, you can obviously see what happened watching.
Right.
But I mean, to go in depth and really get the behind the scenes stories, you know, you kind of need to have a reporter there.
Yeah, you got to have somebody on the ground.
And Dirt on Dirt does a good job of that. There's still, it's amazing to me, and I take a lot of pride in it. I worked there for 4 years the first time. I ended up going back for a little short stint afterward, but how far it's come, you know, and it's kind of probably plateaued a little bit, but it is the Sports Center ESPN of dirt late model racing.
I remember checking it weekly.
Yeah. It was funny. Funny story is when Michael Rigsby, the founder and of Dirt on Dirt, whenever I first met him finally, because when I was freelancing for him, it was just emails back and forth, right? And I didn't actually, Todd Turner was the, Michael did the video stuff, right? Todd Turner was the content editorial director, I guess you would call it. So he was over all the reporting, written reporting. Michael was the video guy. And so I emailed mostly with Todd. When I met Michael at the World Finals that first year, he's like, you know, I have something I want to tell you. I went back and looked, you know, you were like our 7th paying subscriber. And I'm like, no, I didn't.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. In 2007, when they launched, I remember, I don't know how, I think that's on a forum or something. Someone had posted, have you seen this? Like, and what they were doing, it was at the World 100 and they were reporting on it. And I joined right away, and probably same subscription still active.
That's awesome.
You know, so. But anyway, so yeah, I loved working for Dirt on Dirt. It sent me all over the country, writing about, you know, dirt track racing. I didn't make hardly anything, and I drove my own truck and didn't get paid mileage. They gave me a gas card, and that was it. So I probably
that's just doing it for the love.
Yeah,
of
that
it.
was. I mean, I'll be honest. I made $26,000 a year.
Okay,
is what my starting
yeah.
salary. No,
bless your heart.
That ain't a whole lot.
Maybe it's 24. It was like right around 25. It was like. Now that's nothing, obviously. Like that's big, you know, barely
a little
part-time.
better back then.
Back then, yeah, 2011, but it was like when I did the math on how many hours, because, you know, when you go to a race and you get there, you know, 3 or 4 o'clock to kind of get some interviews beforehand, and you got to be there at the race to see what happened, and then you got to stay and get the interviews afterward. You get back to the hotel, you know, if you're lucky by 11, and then you got to sit down and write.
Yeah.
Or
that's
maybe
when the real
you got
work
to, or you got to do some updating from another race going on, right? You got to update the website. I mean, I was making way lower than minimum wage when you figured it by the hourly rate, but I loved it. At first, you know, it was a dream job. But like anything, as soon as it becomes work, you know, and but it was good. I did it for 4 years, got to go, you know, went to Eldora and covered the world, covered the dream, covered Lucas Oil races.
Got to see some badass racing.
Absolutely. I was there when Scott Bloomquist got put to the tail for his window, and it came from the back to win the World 100. You know, and you know, I interviewed him. I remember
that was a huge story.
Whatever the quote he said, I can't remember what he said in the interview now. I used to remember. You'll see it. Like when they put me to the back, it was over. Right?
Yeah.
I was sitting. I think I asked him the question that had him say that or whatever. Like so it was some really cool moments or cool memories being a part of it. But it was a lot of work and a lot of time on the road.
I can see it.
So, but yeah, from there, I knew, you know, that when you're young, you know, and trying to get into something like that, you know, in a industry, you're kind of willing to do just about anything.
Just about anything.
Sweep the floor.
Yeah. But then at some point you realize that, you know, I'd also like to have a life, you know, like a family and everything else. And my wife, Elizabeth, you know, I'm surprised we made it through those years that I was traveling and going all over the country. Yeah. Cause she was in law school. She had moved to Concord to be with me. We actually, you know, there initially when I first started with Dirt on Dirt, we lived right next to the Verizon Wireless Amphitheater, you know, in a apartment complex there. But then she got into, she knew she wanted to go to law school. She got into South Carolina, moved to Columbia. And so, yeah, so I
holy cow, good
followed
for her.
Yeah. I followed her there, you know, and kind of, again, I didn't have any money, I was broke, with that kind of pay. And, but she was a broke college, student. Right. And so I would leave, she'd be busy, doing the law school thing. And then I would leave on the weekends and it was tough, but,
not a whole bunch of time to spend with each other.
No, not at all. But she was so busy. It kind of worked out. Like she didn't have much time for me and I didn't have much time for her. So, but we, made it work. And, she ended up getting a job right out of law school in Panama City, worked for a federal judge, and we moved there. And then it was like, I remember we had a conversation about like, are we actually going to be, and we were already married and we got married while she was in law school. It was like, are we actually going to be family and have, family time? And I'm like, well, yeah, I'd like to. And
somewhat normal.
Yeah. And she had a son, my stepson, Ryan. So, I was already kind of trying to do the family thing.
Oh, yeah.
And then we wanted to have more kids. And so I remember making the decision to start applying for jobs in Panama City and got a job as a student activities coordinator at the Florida State campus in Panama City.
Nice.
And so that would have been right before my son was born. Started there. Jason was born in 2014 and thought, all right, I'm done with racing. Right. Like I was giving it up. Like, that was fun, but there's
time to do the family thing.
And funny stories. There's at that time, there just wasn't a lot of people in the dirt track media world. Right. The guy
up and coming.
Yeah. And the guy that, it's a funny story. I mentioned how whenever I decided to be a reporter or want to do PR or media, I saw a job posting for the World of Outlaws PR director. The guy that took that job, Kevin Kovac, and I met him at Deep South in 2009 when the World of Outlaws, I don't know if you remember this, but the World of Outlaws came there. And I remember meeting him. I was, again, working at Five Flags and a college student, and I emailed ahead of time, like, I like asking if I covered it for the News Journal, that event, and asked him if I could meet him and just see what his job was like. And anyway, followed him around that whole time.
I bet that was cool because that's what got you there.
It was. And, and it convinced me, like, man, I want his job one day.
That kind of come full circle for you.
It did, because funny story is when I left Dirt on Dirt, he was still the PR guy for the World of Outlaws and was he'd been doing it at that point for 5-6 years, actually more, because he had been, since 2007, and that was 2014.
No.
He replaced me at Dirt on Dirt as a reporter for Dirt on Dirt because he was tired of just going to World of Outlaws races and wanted to do other stuff.
That's crazy how that all linked together.
And they could not find anyone to replace him. And so like 6 months, it wasn't even 6 months later, it was like 3 or 4 months later, I remember getting a call from Tim Chrisman, the World of Outlaws series director, and saying, hey, I need you. And I'd met, I knew Tim from covering World of Outlaws in the industry. And I knew the thought crossed my mind whenever I saw Kevin was going to Dirt on Dirt. I'm like, who are they going to hire? Anyway, it worked out pretty good because
they basically swapped jobs.
Yeah, we did. And I got a pretty big raise out of it.
That's
like it was like, because when he called, I'm like, look, my son had just been born. I'm like, I would do it. I told him, I was like, no, I wasn't. I was only half lying because the World of Outlaws job was a lot easier. It's like half the races.
Right.
You're only going to World of Outlaws.
Races.
Yeah, races. And you're not having to do all the other. Again, the hard part of Dirt on Dirt was not just the races I would go to. It was also having to update the website with all the results and stories from all the other and photos and everything. Right. Well, World of Outlaws, you were just responsible for World of Outlaws.
Okay.
So, and I wanted it. Like, I'm like, in back of my mind, like,
yeah,
it was. Yeah. It was a lot easier. And then you were working from home, so it's remote, and you can be more flexible with my son and not have to have him in daycare all the time and everything. But I remember telling Tim, like, it's going to cost you. Like, my wife's not going to let me go back on the road for cheap. We got a kid. She's working a job now full time. And I was able to, get a pretty good deal out of that. And go to work for the World of Outlaws for a couple of years. So.
Hey, race fans. Are you a small business looking to connect with passionate locals across our area? Then this is your chance. At the Short Track Shakedown, we're all about the legends of local racing. Every week, we bring on drivers, track owners, and fans who have helped shape our rich racing history. And guess what? Our listeners aren't just fans. They're loyal locals who love supporting businesses that support their passion. When you advertise with us, you're not just buying an ad. You're fueling a homegrown show built by and for the racing community. Your support helps us grow the podcast and keep bringing fans the stories they love. So if you want to reach a tight-knit, racing-loving community that lives right here in your backyard, let's talk. Email us today at theshorttrackshakedown@gmail.com and get your business in front of folks who live for the weekend at the racetrack.
How was that? Like, I mean,
it was cool.
I mean, you're around all the superstars all the time. Then.
Yeah, it was, I mean, it's cool. Look, so it's really cool. And it is kind of like the dream job, but at the same time,
you get acclimated to it.
you're kind of just a cog in the wheel, you know. And
were they pretty good with you though? The actual drivers, were they pretty accommodating and nice to the media and stuff like that?
For the most part, like
depends if they got wrecked or not.
That's what I was going to say. It depends on what kind of mood they were in.
Right.
There were some like you know, who were really good at understanding that, you know, I can build a fan base, and I'll be Chris Ferguson was one of the best ones, right? He knew like he knew how to like give me a story and give me quotes that made him look good to make fans like him, right? Like, and you know, and then you'd have guys like, like I would say Chris Madden, who didn't understand that. He's still he on his own way is a huge name, right? Now he's a lot of fan base, but he's kind of the bad guy, right? Like in a lot of ways, and
he's the heel.
Well, exactly. And like, I'll be honest, he still is one of the hardest to talk to, one of the hardest drivers, and most critical. But he's, you know, he's passionate about it, right? And will tell you when you do wrong, or like if as a journalist, would only really want to talk to me when he had something to complain about, you know. And so you just kind of had to know what made the drivers tick and how to cover them. And I feel like I was fairly good at that.
Yeah,
you know?
I could see that.
Yeah.
There's an art to anything.
Yeah. But the biggest thing about it is like, it was a lot of hours and a lot of time on the road, a lot of late hours, late nights. And at some point you know, that dream job idea, you realize it's really a job, and the dream goes away.
Right.
A little
bit. Turns into work.
It does. And, so
you can see why he took the job at Dirt on Dirt. Yeah.
Right. You know, exactly.
Well, he actually jumped from the skillet to the fire. Though.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
And he's still with Dirt on Dirt.
Is he?
Kevin is. And like, that's funny. It's funny to mention that, but he's, you know, most of these people I've mentioned, you know, Michael Rigsby, Todd Turner, Kevin Kovac, Ben Shelton, got to know him pretty well. He was the announcer with the World of Outlaws when I was there. They're all I'm really good friends with, and, you know, and got to know really well. And
does a great job announcing too.
Yeah,
That guy's
great.
awesome.
But yeah, but it still was like, it's still, again, a lot of traveling, a lot of time on the road, away from home, away from family. My wife then got her first job working for the federal judge, was fairly laid back and the hours weren't too bad. But then she that was a temporary job, 2 years. And after that, she got a job with a private firm in Jacksonville. So we moved to Jacksonville, and it was, you know, she was working a lot, like, you know, really, you know, the grind of being a first-year attorney at a private law practice, you know, was a lot. And we knew that I wouldn't be able to travel and be gone like I was. So I ended up, after 2 years, I think, with the World of Outlaws, again, got out of racing, decided I was going to be a teacher, and went to teaching, and thought I was going to just be done with racing.
What were you teaching?
Journalism, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
English and journalism, at Yulee High School. They had an elective course, journalism. And then also, which was only like one class, and then taught English the rest of the classes. So I hated it.
Hated being a teacher.
It was just babysitting, is what I felt like I was doing, not really teaching.
You didn't have people that really wanted to learn.
Yeah, and it was unfortunate because I got stuck with the lower level kids that, again, you know, didn't want to learn, didn't want to be there. I mean, I could relate, but I wasn't good at motivating them myself, you know? So, you know, I didn't really enjoy it. And, I teachers, you know, hey, I respect the heck out of them. Like, if you can do that, put up with kids these days.
My dad retired after 25 years, but he said the last couple of years, like the generation, it's just not the same. You know, the kids just wasn't the same.
Yeah. I can only imagine. I barely made it, through 3 years, and, it somehow ended up back with what was Dirt on Dirt, but had been bought out by Flow Sports, and ended up getting a job back with them after our kids got a little older and things were a little more settled down. You know, went back to work ended up somehow back in the racing world.
Right.
Which at that point I knew why the Hunt the Front deal was really starting. Jonathan had kind of gotten that going, and it was starting to take off.
So that's a great transition. Let's jump into the Hunt the Front stuff. So tell me what your role in the Hunt the Front, and tell me how it kind of got started.
So, doing all that traveling and everything, you know, I feel like it, you know, and being part of the national scene for like that high up in the racing world, it really is like, and then Jonathan and Joseph were still racing back home. And it's like, man, how do we, you know, again, our dream was always to be professional racers, right? And to race for a living and be, you know, go to the World 100, go to Eldora and be at the top level. Right. And, it was always still in the back of my mind is like, how do we, I don't know why, because obviously I'd gotten out of it. Jonathan was still racing, but wasn't doing it that much. But Joseph was getting good, really young and running, got into late models at like 13 or maybe even younger. I don't even remember.
And he's a shoe.
Yeah. It was like, okay, maybe he could make it. Right. Like,
and he won that 10,000 win race at Southern at this point.
What year was that? That's a good question.
Guys,
I don't remember.
Southern 100.
Yeah, the Southern 100.
That was the first big win. He won that before he won the national, didn't he?
Yeah. He won. It was a crate race when he won it.
I want to say that was before Hunt the Front.
It was, that was before Hunt the Front. I think that might have been when Jonathan was, so Hunt the Front originally started as a blog. And so kind of back up, when I got out of the racing the second time and quit the World of Outlaws, Jonathan was still racing, and he was a teacher. That's why I decided to try teaching. He was an English teacher, and again, he had done a little bit of the reporting stuff and writing stuff like I did, and so he'd kind of become a writer. Both of us were obviously writers, and somewhere along the way, we decided, and I think he started it first, to start the blog with a B, and write about racing, right? And I'd quit Dirt on Dirt and still wanted to somewhat be a part of it. So that's where Hunt the Front kind of came about, as just a way for us to write about racing. To tell the stories. And Jonathan, I'll be honest, we talked about doing it together, but really he was way better at that style of writing than I was. I was a reporter, right? I went and reported on stuff. He was really good at kind of telling more of a storyteller, writing. And so he really did really well with that and got the blog going, got a fairly good following, started the Facebook page, and, kind of had a following there, writing about his racing and Joseph's racing. And
he made a bunch of, like, I want to call them memes, I guess you could say, but they
like
were
motivational
popular.
memes, if you will, like basically take a picture and make it
black and white. Yeah, put an inspirational message on there.
He had a branding. Yeah, inspirational. Yep. It's funny. I've done forgotten about those. Every now and then someone will share one of those randomly from way back when, and it'll like remind, or one that will pop up in memories or something on Facebook, but that's pretty cool.
I couldn't tell you why I remember them, but I thought they were cool when they come about.
Yeah. But he had done a pretty good job, and that was really mostly him doing that. And every now and then I would write something for him for it and whatever. But so we had moved to Jacksonville and quit, I'd quit doing the racing thing and was teaching. I also, I started, me and a buddy started a CrossFit gym there. There was no CrossFit gym, and I'd gotten into CrossFit. And again, I was into sports growing up, and so I always stayed in relatively decent shape and worked out, and opened the CrossFit gym there and was really into that. That was my thing. There's a lot of similarities in the CrossFit community and the dirt track racing community, believe it or not. But got where I was following somehow got turned on to some YouTube bloggers, creators in the CrossFit world. I was watching them literally just making videos about their working out and what they're doing every day, and then going to competitions and making videos about their competitions. And somewhere along the way, it's just like, someone should do this for racing. And the guy, I remember there's a guy he's actually from England, that I was following that did that kind of, YouTube vlogging for CrossFit. And I'm like, and is what he did. Like, he had a 200 something thousand subscribers, and it appeared to be how he made his living. He started an apparel brand off of it and everything. And I'm like, that could be it. That could be how, we make no one's doing this in the dirt track world, in the racing world, hardly, period. I didn't,
y'all could pioneer.
Yeah. There was, in the more broader motorsports world, you had like, Cletus McFarlane and the 1320 video, and, you had more automotive stuff, but there was nothing really going, at least not big, specific to dirt track. And I remember telling Jonathan, it's like, we should do this. All right. And I showed him I shared the videos with him that the guys I was watching. He started watching Cletus, and we started watching how he did things. He watched Casey Neistat, who's just more of a general YouTube vlogger in that time period. And again, all this time, the blog, the website was kind of, generating a little bit of a following, the social media stuff he was posting. And so we decided, I remember it was a race in March of 2019. It was the Crate USA 10,000 win show at Bubba Raceway Park in Ocala. And I was living in Jacksonville, and it's like, let's make a video. Joseph was going to go run that race. I'll meet y'all there. Let's make a video. Try to make a vlog. Right. And, we did it, and it was, pretty similar to how we do things now. Jonathan does with the videos, but I don't know. It kind of, and like, it's not like it just took off and did great. Right. But we had a little bit of a following already on social media from what we've been doing. and saw that, okay, this could turn into something when we posted the vlog itself, the video, and people started watching it. And then just said, hey, let's just start making videos. And
so you started in March of 19?
It was March of 2019.
Man, it took off pretty quick then, because I remember my friend had a bachelor party at the World 100.
Yeah.
And we went up there with y'all, and it was Bo, Chandler.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
And I remember, because I've seen the YouTube videos, and I remember walking around the grandstands at the door and people stopping Joseph and Jonathan wanting to take pictures and autographs. And that's when I said, holy cow, they're going to do something with this.
So I remember exactly when you're talking about, but it was March 2019. And, I can remember it started taking off around Memorial Day, because I remember my wife and kids and I were on vacation in Boston, Massachusetts, and sitting at a restaurant and watching the subscriber number grow. Jonathan had just posted a video about wherever they'd been racing that weekend, or as a shop video or something. And it was just like, every time he refreshed it, on the back end, like there'd be another 100 subscribers.
Yeah.
And it's like, where are these people coming from? And when's it going to stop?
It's
like, keep going.
Well, you don't want it to stop.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, how high could this go? Right. Like, and then where we really took off was later that summer, I decided to get, I was in Jacksonville and I wanted to get back into racing in some kind of way. And there was a go-kart track like 10, 15 minutes from my house. And where I lived I didn't live in Jacksonville. I lived north of there in Yulee. And in Callahan, there was a go-kart track. And I decided to get a go-kart and, brought it before I went and bought it. And before taking it to the track and racing it, we came back home for a weekend or something here. And we made a go-kart track out at Journerville in the field there. And me, Jonathan, Joseph, and Daddy just see who can make the fastest lap. Right. And we made a video
it's going
about
to turn
that.
into a competition.
Yeah. And we made a video, us driving, running our go-kart in the backyard. And it took off. That video right now, it's did like 700 or something thousand views. So it's still our most viewed video. But that is where we really started people, YouTube, when people see your videos and start watching them, YouTube's like, well, let me show other people like that and see if they like it. The algorithm. And we hit the algorithm that summer, and really it just took off. And I think we knew, like I said, when we went to Joseph later that year was when they got the Capital race cars, and Joseph swept the Southern All-Stars weekend at Southern.
Right.
And, kind of was like, and then the Capital deal, they helped us out with those cars, Capital deal. And that came, Capital did. And that came because, one of their employees was following us on YouTube, thought we were the coolest thing ever, and showed Marshall Green. And they're like, you should, help them out, and it'll make Capital look really good. And so we didn't get the cars for free or anything, but they helped us, gave us a deal that we would never been able to afford them. And ended up getting one car, and then later on got another one. But the first night out in the first Capital car Joseph got was that Southern All-Stars doubleheader at Southern in 2019, September 2019, Labor Day weekend, and Joseph won both races, which was big back then, for us. And then the next week was when we went to the World 100 and made videos as, just being there as fans or whatever. And I thought the same thing when
that
the amount of people.
It was nuts. Yeah. We were walking around the grandstands and people be like at the top of the grandstand, start screaming Joseph's name.
That's awesome.
Running down wanting to take pictures. And I literally looked at Curtis Cotton. He was there, and I said, they're going to go somewhere with this.
Yeah. So we knew then that there was something to it, and we could do something, and it took off, and obviously it's still what we're doing. So
what is your role in it, and what are you doing behind the scenes?
So it's kind of evolved all along. At that time, whenever we first started making the videos, again, I'd gone back to working for Dirt on Dirt / Flow Racing at the point. And so I've seen this sport. I worked for the World of Outlaws. I worked for Dirt on Dirt, worked for Flow Racing. Like, I've seen the media side of it and business side of it, at the highest level,
right?
Essentially.
Watched it evolve.
Yeah. And so, I kind of all along, I feel like, and I had some experience running a business with the CrossFit gym did that for almost, I guess, 3 or 4 years. I can't remember exactly, but learned a lot, basic business stuff. Right. And that's what Hunt the Front became really quickly. It was cool making the videos and creating the content and going racing. But, we realized when the merch sales started coming in and sponsorship opportunities and also it became a business really quick.
Right.
And
you had to capitalize on it.
Yes, it did. And I feel like we were fortunate that I'd had the experience with the gym, and not just me, but my wife as well, because she was very involved, and we learned a lot of things not to do in business.
Trust me, I know what you mean.
So, like one of the biggest epiphanies I had running the gym was I should not be in here cleaning the bathrooms when I need to be out selling memberships.
That's a fact.
You know, and and it's so hard. And that
you got to delegate.
Yes, and you know, it's a lot. It would be a lot cheaper for me to hire someone to clean the bathrooms and just do these time consuming things, and me go out and actually bring in revenue.
Right. You got to look at how much is it costing you to do that job?
Exactly. And so that kind of business mindset I learned from the gym days. Really was able. I'm glad I had it, because I feel like it helped us on the business side of Hunt the Front. Initially, again, I was still working for Dirt on Dirt, so I was kind of helping Jonathan, me and my wife both, helping him and his wife Shadow, manage the merchandise and the growth there, and get the systems in place, and everything from building a Shopify website.
Yeah. The merch stuff. I mean, y'all have got some really cool looking stuff. You know what I mean? Y'all have got a good logo and stuff like that. But man, that's like that outweighed the racing and the YouTube and everything else for a while there, didn't it?
It did. It's probably, I think still is our biggest revenue source, annually. When you look at it, of course, there's a lot of cost that goes into it.
Bringing the trailer to the track.
The cost of the goods sold. We have, the people working in, we have our shop in there in Milton, but we also have the one side of it's all merchandise. And we have a team of, right now, because we just did this giveaway, we have a team of, it's like 6 or 7 people, and they're working not full time. It's kind of, shift work kind of deal. And Joseph's wife, Kayla, is running that. And they, it's an operation.
It's turned into a full blown deal.
But no, when I went full time, it was really kind of just helping Jonathan move along with it, right? Keeping up with it, trying to, get the sponsors, trying to get, help him. I'd go to a race and do the videos for him when he, needed a break, and had to help him edit and post it on social media. Cause again, initially I was living in Jacksonville. When COVID hit, we decided to move back, home here. And after COVID, 2021, we moved back.
All the editing. I mean,
it's a lot. Jonathan's, he's a machine when it comes to editing.
I can tell you from experience right now, when you don't know how to edit and you ain't been doing it a while, it's hard and time consuming.
Well, that was the thing, is everything Jonathan's self-taught, right? Like everyone's like, man, y'all must have, known, and he uses an iPad to edit. Right? For initially, it's just his phone.
Mind. So, I've seen videos of him doing it on iPad. I'm like, I couldn't do it.
It's simpler the better, because it's able to be, there's a rawness to it, but that's because he's putting them out so quick and timely, which I think is a big part of why we're able to grow, is because
consistency.
Yeah, consistency, timely. Like if you're posting a video about a race a week after it happened, no one cares.
Yeah, it's over.
But if you're doing it the next day or within a couple days, it's almost like real time.
Right.
But no, where I really got into it, where Hunt the Front really started becoming more of a legit real business, and I went full time with it, was whenever we, decided we wanted to pursue streaming.
Right.
And so that happened during the COVID shutdown. Tom Lowry, and we'd always kind of worked with Tom. Tom kind of saw the Hunt the Front thing taking off, and that it could benefit the Southern some, and and he was like to bring some attention, and everything. And when COVID hit, he came to us and said, and we'd done a few events, kind of helped Tom out with some stuff, like tried to help bring interest to the racetrack. Tom said, hey, and everything was shut down. You couldn't you really couldn't have a race, and he came to us and said, hey, I got approval to have a competitor only race. I think this might've been May of 2020, I think. So like a month or so into the shutdown. And he said, yeah, we can only have competitors, and you got to be some. When he said that, and what it turned into was you just had to buy a pit pass to go. But the idea was like, I think we can do this if we stream it. And Dan at Just Dirt had been doing some streaming at the track. We hadn't really had any experience with it. I worked for Flow Racing, so I knew the concept, and I knew a little bit about
There's
it.
There's a lot that goes into that too.
But I was more, when I worked for Flow Racing, I was a reporter through Dirt on Dirt, so I didn't know a whole lot about it. But we decided to have that race. It was just a 1,000 to win crate race or something. Jonathan, Bo, Steven Jernigan, the crate guys, at the time.
Local heroes.
Yeah. And they had other divisions too. But as far as the headlining thing that we really promoted was the crate race. And it did really well on the stream. Like it was
COVID, nobody had nothing to do.
Well, that was the thing then, was like, man, we should have realized, like, okay, this is because there's literally no racing going on. And no one's doing anything. There's no sports or anything, or at least you can't go watch them. And so, yeah, a lot of people tuned in. It was a really good financially for the racetrack at a time where they couldn't have any other events.
They had no other income.
Yeah, exactly. And, but it put this kind of the seed of an idea in our mind that we should look into this.
Right.
And at the same time, we, again, Cleus McFarland, his whole YouTube thing, like he was starting to do events and had bought, I don't know if he had bought the Freedom Factory yet. But he was it was clear, like there's a business model there. Yeah.
Like that.
And there's a model there where if you have the audience set up the streaming platform and they want to watch.
Yeah.
So we did a few,
kind of like if you build it, they'll come.
Yeah. And that's what it really became. The next year, so that was 2020, 2021 and 2022, we did some one-off stuff initially on Facebook. Facebook used to have a Facebook pay-per-view thing, like a live streaming, which was a really good deal. I wish that would have been interesting if they continued that.
Yeah.
But they shut it down for whatever reason, after a while. But we did a few on there that did well. Some of the Winter National stuff at Southern. The next year we started to set up our own deal in 2022 and did a few events. And then 2023 is when we really launched it. What is now Hunt the Front TV and the Hunt the Front Super Dirt series.
Yeah.
So that was all really me. That I was the one while Jonathan was still making the vlogs and doing the YouTube thing, and Joseph was, Joseph, he's the racer, right? Like he wouldn't know, he can barely post on Facebook, let alone make a video or anything. So,
right.
He's always just focused on the racing and the race team.
He's probably got the most fun job.
Yeah, well, it depends. Like again, that
depends
idea
on how he does.
Well, that we go back to, is it the dream job when after the dream, becomes work, right? When dream becomes reality, even reality's work, right?
Oh, yeah. But working on a car is a full-time job at that point.
Yeah. But no, that was, my thing was building the streaming, kind of the business model behind that and launching it and growing it into what we have today was what I did, my role.
That's awesome,
man. It's cool. Y'all have had some big name drivers coming and running y'all's series. And that's, I thought that was so cool when I first started seeing that.
Are you looking to transform your property? Do you need a pool removed, land cleared, or expert grading for your next big project? Look no further than More Site Solutions. One thing that makes More Site Solutions different than other companies, when you call, you're not just getting a business, you're getting Jake. That's right, the owner. Jake personally answers your phone call, shows up for every estimate, and never leaves you hanging. No ghosting, no excuses, just honest, reliable service from start to finish. And if you're the DIY type, they have you covered too. More Site Solutions can supply the materials you need to get the job done right. So whether it's a big project or a small one, More Site Solutions is ready to make it happen. Give Jake a call today at 850-332-2827, and let's get to work.
So what came first, really? What did I kind of like the chicken and the egg or whatever, but with the streaming and then the Super Dirt series, did y'all kind of launched those together to kind of complement each other, or how did that work?
So we did. First we were going to partner with another series, an existing series, to stream their races. And I had very long I'll be honest with you, and I don't mean to, I'd say it was I had a lot of conversations with Ray Cook, and we were going to partner with him to stream the Schaefer's Oil stuff. And got really deep into that. And that's why I keep trying to remember how we got jumped from 2022 to 2023. But the reason is because he ended up re-signing with Flow. As his streaming partner, had been for a long time, and he ended up keeping his stuff with Flow, and it kind of set us back because we didn't have a series, right? And so that year that I had initially thought we were going to launch the streaming platform, we had to kind of take a step back, did a few races, picked up some Southern All-Star races, the ones here at Southern, the ones at Buckshot, but it was good though because somewhere along the way we ended up getting to know this, who's Logan Gibson, who is now our main production. I don't even know what his title, production director, the guy in charge of our live streams, right? Like he runs the streaming side of things. And he's from near Gadsden, Alabama. And so he's in a pretty central location, but got to know him, and he really kind of helped us get the streaming deal going, like the tech side of it.
Right. There's a lot to all that.
Yeah. Because I don't know anything about it. Like, I mean, I know a little bit now, but we would be,
at the time,
he put us light years ahead of where we would have been by, kind of helping us get going. And now, like I said, he's our, basically runs the show when it comes to the production. We have a production trailer that he built out with all the bells and whistles.
That's just like regular TV. Then I mean, you got the whole
it's
deal,
a
big
production studio in a trailer, right? In a 20-foot.
All your cameramen have radios, so they know can talk to them where to point and everything.
It's an operation for our bigger race. At the same time, we just streamed the Northern All Stars race at Lawrenceburg Speedway in Lawrenceburg, Indiana, with one person there.
Oh wow!
So I mean, it's kind of a like for the Hunt the Front races, we do a huge we have 7 or 8 people on the production crew, and then another 7 or 8 on the operations, the series side of things, officials and staff. But then there's some events where it's, we really got to watch our budget and send as few as possible to get the job done. But
how do you do that? Just set up the cameras around and have they're all working and you just kind of go in between them and.
Well, can't give away all our secrets,
right?
But no. So you're talking about like the single person crew. Yeah. So what we do is we have someone who will go and set it up. And the way it works is you're essentially he's up there just shooting, what you see on the racetrack, the camera that moves, right? And then you can set up other cameras around. And what you're doing is you're actually streaming all the cameras at once back to someone remotely who then produces it and sends another stream out that you see. Okay. Right.
Wow.
So
that's cool.
And it's, that's how, Flow does a lot of theirs. Like it's cool that, when you watch the Lucas Oil Series or the World 100, on Flow, or even Dirt Vision, they do a great job too with the World Outlaws races. It's like a full on, it's almost as good as a NASCAR production, right? Like it is top of the line. You're going to get all the bells and whistles. And that's what we've modeled our Hunt the Front series, Super Dirt Series races and other bigger races that we stream after. But again, not every race needs that. Right. You could not afford to do that for every single race that we stream.
Right.
So we had to look at ways to still do that and really bring that grade A level production when we need to, but still be able to afford to put the spotlight on the smaller races that, and to add extra content. So we kind of, it's like I said, we have that, what I call C level. We have A, B, and C. A is our full on Hunt the Front Super Dirt Series. Big production. The trailer's there. Again, that staff of 7 or 8 people, even down to having someone in the trailer cutting replays as they happen and posting like literally within, when something crazy happens on like the Brian Shirley fire. I don't know if y'all saw that at Needmore, the big fire we had. Once he was okay, we literally had that on social media in like 10 minutes.
That's awesome. And that's key to that stuff too.
And not to make light of a really dangerous situation, but that's how you grow.
You got to have those wow moments.
You got to produce income too.
Yeah. And preferably it's the racing, right? Like a dramatic finish or, crazy, something happens on the track that, that gets the attention, but usually it's the, Corey Hedgecock and Michael Page fighting, right? Like, at Sonoma this year, like it blows up and gets all the attention and brings attention to our series, our races and our streams.
It's all about building the brand.
Yeah, that too.
So with you working for Flow at one point, and now you have your own streaming, like how does, in any business, it don't matter if you're making sandwiches or if you're doing streaming or whatever, you're always going to have competition. And as the technology grows, especially in dirt track racing and the streaming stuff, how do you compete with the bigger operations? And y'all are a big operation in your own right, but how do you compete in those markets for the races? And how do you pick which races you want to cover that will advance your brand? You know what I mean?
So from the beginning, my goal was to create, our goal was to create with the series was a national tour style series and and show, right? Bring what, essentially a national tour race,
right.
At the regional level, right? Cause that's one reason we started our own series is we didn't feel like, especially in the Southeast, the series were as professionally ran as they should have been.
Right.
And we had a lot of frustrations. As racers, we had a lot of frustrations, that we felt like it could be better organized, better payouts, better officials officiating, and I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but so I don't mean that too negatively. I don't want, but one of the reasons we're able to improve on that is, going back to our YouTube audience, right? We knew we could bring revenue to hire more staff, right? Hire more officials.
Right.
So, that was our goal, was to build that, and kind of had an idea what, cause we'd kind of gotten involved with promoting some races. We knew kind of, I had an idea of how I knew kind of financially, how not to overspend and how to, like what would be good payouts that tracks can afford, but racers want to race for, right? Budget. Yeah. And so from the series side, I kind of, that was our guide there. On the streaming side, I really felt like we wanted to be the flow, or Dirt Vision, if you will, for regional dirt late model racing. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because when Flow landed Lucas Oil Series, as a, their streaming partner, that contract, essentially they didn't need regional races anymore.
Right.
And they were putting all their effort into that.
Yes. And so
bigger fish.
Yeah. And so, when I saw the opportunity to essentially be the third, streaming platform behind Dirt Vision and Flow, or Flow and Dirt Vision, I would say. And that's kind of what we've tried to build, to use the regional level dirt late model racing to build the third option, if you will, in that, that category. And so to be the place where you can go to watch the regional shows. And, every now and then when there's not a big national tour race going on, be the biggest thing there is that weekend.
Yeah, you'll have your day in the sun. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of been our target is, like right now we're getting ready to put out our schedule. We're working on our schedule for next year. And I'm just waiting on the national tours to put theirs out or to finish theirs. I know some of, I talked to both, Rick Swally with Lucas Oil Series and Steve Francis with World of Outlaws to know kind of what they're working on. And as soon as we know where they are, when there's open weekends, we're going to fill the gaps.
Work together so you ain't on top of each other.
Right. And again, that's when, when we have a race at Talladega with neither of the national tours racing in March, April, whenever that was, and get 50 plus cars there, and Ryan Gustin's there, Brandon Overton's there, Garrett Albertson's there, you're getting 4 or 5 national touring guys from each tour. And then you have all, Jimmy Owens, Corey Hedgecock, Zach Mitchell, all the regional guys, right? It's like, we do really well. So that's been really is the scheduling. And that's when people want to tune in and subscribe to Hunt the Front TV. And so that's really, for us, it was the schedule, for me, is the scheduling, making sure we have a really good schedule is how, how we've been able to be successful,
So I've got a couple of questions about the Hunt the Front Super Dirt Series. First of all, and I think I want some clarification on this, because I think a lot of the listeners, we see these big names come in, we see the big series comes in and stuff like that, but the racetrack still has to fit a lot of the financial burden of having those series come in. So how does the series actually do the payout, and how does it generate the revenue? Obviously you're bringing the names, you build it, they'll come kind of a situation, but how do you get the racetrack on board of, say, hey, this purse is, I'm just using fictitious numbers here, but let's say $15,000, do y'all bring part of the purse money in as well? Or does the racetrack have to fit the whole bill? How do you do that?
Very interesting question. Yeah. And it's, I'm glad you asked, because that's not something many people ask about. And I think there's a lot of assumptions that are wildly inaccurate. Right. I've heard a lot of crazy things like,
I can believe it.
Like we just had a race canceled at North Georgia because of rain ahead of time. And someone thought they still had to pay us $60,000, even though we canceled. And I'm like, that would be nice. We didn't just cancel. We didn't make a dime off that race. No. So the way it typically works is the event is the track's event, right? They are the ones putting on the event. They take in the gate revenue. They are then responsible for paying the series, the payout to cover whatever, enough to cover what the series is paying the drivers, structure. The purse. Yeah. And then with some series, there's also a sanctioning fee tacked on there, right? We don't charge a sanctioning fee. And that's how we've been different as a series so far. We're constantly evolving our business model and trying to, be profitable when we can, if and so we're looking at potentially having to implement a sanctioning fee in there. But so the way it works for us is when we go to a track, they collect all the revenue from the gates, concessions, everything. It's their event. Only thing we take in is the super late model entry fees. That does go to the series. Okay. And then they cut us a check at the end of the night that covers the payout. We go ahead and pay all the drivers with a check. We have enough money in the bank account to cover. I mean, some of our purses are, our highest purse is $70,000. Right. Our 20,000 to win purse. Our standard Saturday purse, 12,000 to win, 1,000 to start purse. Total purse, that money that goes out to drivers is $48,000 or something like that. That's our minimum Saturday night purse. Right. So we're giving out checks. Right. Of those races.
A lot of money rolling around.
And then the track essentially pays us to cover that. But then we also, have the streaming component where, we then kind of, on the backside, I guess you call it, hand them a check for streaming that helps, make the event profitable. Streaming to buy the media rights essentially for that event.
So that was kind of my question, because and I've dabbled with some series stuff and run a series myself, but it was very hard to make the series a standalone and be profitable. You're basically, whatever you bring in, you're paying back out. You know what I mean? And it's a cool thing to say, hey, this is this series, but I just didn't know how you could be profitable having a series.
So for us, that's why we did, started our series, is we knew we could do what no other series
cover
at the regional
media
level.
of it,
is to bring in our own streaming revenue.
Right.
But the traditional series model is, as a series, you get the track to pay the payout, pay you a sanctioning fee, and then you take in entry fees. So let's say you have a sanctioning fee as a dirt late model series, of for round numbers, $1,500, a race. That's what you charge the track. And then you take in enough entry fees, around anywhere from $100 to $150 a car. Right. So let's say you had a full field. Again, make it round numbers. You had 20, or let's say you had 20 cars and you took in $100 in entry fees per car. That's $2,000. $1,500 in sanctioning fee. You've just brought in $3,500. Now you've got to also pay your staff, right, for that event, and I've seen it everywhere. Some series bring, the guy running the series and one other official, right? A tech guy. That's two people, and they drive overnight. They drive together and they drive overnight home. So there's no hotel. It's just their fuel bill and whatever they, the two guys make. And the series profits the rest. All right.
So it's a labor of love, basically.
But then you also have a points fund you got to pay at the end of the year.
Right.
All right. But hopefully you get some sponsorships to cover that. That's a big thing. If you can get enough sponsors to help cover the points fund, or at least some of it. If not, it's coming from those entry fees and sanctioning fees. That's the traditional model. Again, ours doesn't work that way. We don't charge it. We charge. So like even our series regulars don't pay a entry fee. So we don't get that revenue. We do get some entry fee revenue. We don't charge a sanctioning fee. Ours is really mostly backed by the streaming and some sponsors.
You started the series to control your own destiny with
Pretty
the
much,
streaming.
to give us the ability to go out and make content to stream.
Yep.
Basically.
So that makes a lot more sense. And, it's these series and everything, everybody thinks that they're getting rich and it's so hard to keep a series going, you know what I mean? And finding the sponsorship and stuff like that.
People see the big numbers. They don't see the costs. They don't see everything behind the scenes.
It's that, look, I've been in a few different businesses involved with, and on the outside, it always looks like you do that, promoting races. So we promote some of our races now where we actually lease the track, pay the promoter a set fee, and then we bring in the gate revenue, but we're also responsible for the purse and, and everything. But, like anything I've been involved with in business from that, before you can run all the numbers you want and think, exactly how it's going to go. And, it never works. There's always hidden expenses that you have no idea about.
Yep.
It is never fails.
With the economy back on the rise and interest rates coming down, if you're looking for a new home in the Panhandle area, give Levada Burrows McIntyre a call with Century 21 BE3. She's been serving the Panhandle, helping buyers and sellers achieve all of their real estate needs. Give her a call at 850-554-2180 or find her on her website at levadasales.com. So one thing running a series, you've got 30 guys that you're dealing with on a regular basis, and you've got 30 different personalities. You constantly, and you'll never make everybody happy all the time. You know what I mean? How do y'all juggle, like Joseph, running your series versus the competitors? Because you're dipping on both sides of the fence there. You own the series, you own the streaming, and you've got a driver racing in it. How do you handle that versus the rumor mill? You know what I'm saying? You know how that goes.
Oh yeah. No, listen, from the beginning, it was, we've got to have a clear separation here.
Right.
And it's even, we've taking great strides to try to avoid there being any, it being clear that there's no favoritism.
Right.
And that's almost got to be harder on Joseph.
And we do. And so I'll first say, first thing I did, I don't make any calls. I do not race direct. I don't, I hired the first year, former promoter of East Bay Raceway Park, Todd Hutto was our race director.
Nice.
He ended up transitioning to be our one of our tech guys this year, tech director. then the second year, and our announcer Travis Scott became our race director and does a great job. And he is by the book. He has his rule book and he follows his rule book. Right. And that to me is the biggest thing. If you're a race promoter listening to this, operator racetrack or race director or whatever, if you have a rule book, it gets you out of any trouble. That's right. Because you are going by the rules. And if they don't like it, it's black and white. Now,
it ain't nothing your decision.
Yeah. Now, unfortunately, there's always things that happen that don't exactly, there's not a rule written for it. Right.
That's sometimes. When you
start sweating. Next week.
Yes, that is exactly right. The best thing you can do is make the best decision you can given the situation. Be open and honest with those involved about why or how you came to that conclusion, and then say, going forward,
next week we're gonna have a rule.
It's gonna be in black and white.
We've had to do that.
It'll be a red rule.
Added, a change. But no, so having someone else in charge of the operation of the series, tech, we're dirt car sanctioned, and that's one reason is because they send a tech guy, tech director, and then we do have, again, the first year was just the dirt car tech man. And it was just too much for one person. So to have we provide a second tech person, and they do it together.
Right.
And this, again, dirt car sanctions the World 100. Like they're
badass.
They're the World Outlaws falls under dirt car tech. So
don't get much tougher.
Yeah, and that's what and I'll tell anyone who asks, if you have any question about how the 10 cars being teched, you go talk to dirt car, because I have no idea. They're the ones who do it.
Yep.
So anyway, we've gone out of our way. And again, anytime there's been, people don't see it, but anytime there's been a rule or a questionable call that, could be made for or against Joseph or the 10 car, it is automatically going against him.
Yep. You just got to do that.
And that's the only way you can do it. You know what I mean?
Because if you don't, that rumor mill is going to fire up and go.
Oh yeah. And it still does. Even, like it's, everything, like Joseph's leading a race, and it's the race at all. So it's pretty standard in dirt late model racing. If the track is rubbered get to a restart, you go single file. Like, you make the drivers mad because then everyone's beating and banging. You pretty much go single file if the track is clearly rubbered. There was a race a couple years ago, or last year, Joseph was leading at all tech, and there's a call and it clearly rubbered. And if you get to 5 to go, when, it's automatically a single file restart per the rules, that's good. You're good, you're covered. But we had a caution with like 7 to go. And it's like, you do, normally we would automatically just say it's going to be single file. Track's rubbered, hate it. It is what it is. We don't want to tear a bunch of equipment. Joseph's leading, you can't do that.
Right.
And so we go double file. Fortunately, no one got wrecked. I remember, because I was like, I hope no one gets wrecked on this restart. But that's an example of, like, we know, and Travis knows that, if there's a, and that's a judgment call on his part as a race director. Do we go single file or double file? Any other one leading that race, he's going single file. But because Joseph is, once you go a single file, it's going to give an advantage. No one's passing.
Right.
Double file, at least the guy can get on the top and kind of angle and try to get by the leader. But anyway, it's been a balancing act, and I feel like we've done a good job of. I mean, there's people who will say, they're fair, they do this, they do that, but I know I sleep at night knowing the 10 car doesn't get any favoritism.
Right.
And you're always going to have that. It doesn't matter what you do and how strict you are on the 10 car, whatever. You're always going to have people, and that's what you got 30 personalities. You're never going to make everybody happy all the time. But well, man, I want to put a plug in, because we certainly appreciate y'all coming on and sponsoring the show. And we've got this big race coming up at Milton, man. Tell me a little bit about that, and let's plug that race a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. So, we with the Hunt the Front series, it's no secret we haven't had a race at Southern. So, everyone keeps asking why you haven't had a race at Southern, and if we will, and so this year, we had an open, and a lot of it's scheduling. A lot of it is when can you fit it in the schedule that makes sense. Southern's a track that's not centrally located. So, you got to make a schedule that is going to
accommodate the traveling.
Yeah. The traveling teams and everything, and
make sure nothing else is going on.
Right. So finally this year had an opportunity to just book one at Southern and get, our home track on the schedule. But yeah, we're looking forward to it. It's our standard payouts, 8,000 to win on Friday and 12,000 to win on Saturday.
Nice.
We are co-promoting it with Tom. It's sometimes, like I said, we either lease a track. Sometimes it's straight up the tracks event, which is pretty standard. Sometimes we'll co-promote to help put it on and take some of the burden. Really, that's what it is. Take some of the risk away from just being on the promoter. And other times we straight up lease it, but this is a co-promote, and we've done a few with Tom before in the past. The King of the Sandbox, 20,000 win race we did a couple years ago, that kind of thing. But
I'm excited about what y'all got going on that Friday night because, it's really hard to get a Friday night crowd to Milton. So, I mean, I think what y'all are trying to do with the concert and something about tell me about something about a wrestling ring or something.
I'm pretty excited about that. We are doing on Friday night and it's called we're calling it the Rumble at the Races, the whole event name, kind of leaning into the wrestling thing. But on Friday night, we're going to have, we're going to get the racing program. It's going to be a full super late model program. You're going to see, qualifying heat races, B mains if we have enough cars, but may not, but still be a good show. And then a feature. The local divisions that are racing that night are only running heat races. So we should get done. Our goal is to be done around 9:00 with the racing. And then in the pit area, I was just out there Friday at the track, looking at it with the folks putting on the wrestling part of it. But we're going to have a wrestling ring set up right when you go into the pit area from the pass-through gate, and a stage. And so we're going to invite, obviously it's going to be right amongst all the drivers. So hopefully they have no choice but to hear it. Maybe they'll come hang out and have a good time. But hopefully some of the fans come as well into the pit area. It'll be open. Anyone can come in there after the races are over. And we're going to have about an hour worth wrestling show. Like, like a WWE style, and
on the top row.
Yeah, exactly. And so what's funny is the reason we thought about doing this was we had, at Sonoa, our 4th of July weekend race. I know a lot of people probably saw it, but Corey Hedgecock and Michael Page got into it. And there was a lot of the wrestling, social media wrestling audio put over the, my God, don't do it. No, or whatever.
It's amazing what people do.
And it's like, man, we should have a wrestling match at the races. And my thought was initially that we would somehow tie into the racers and get them involved. And like everything, you get an idea, but it doesn't always work out. But it's still going to be really cool. We're going to have it's New Heights Wrestling. I think they're out of the Panama City area somewhere down there.
That reminds me of the old Carousel Lounge. They used to set up the wrestling in there. And that was a big deal. So people went to that. It was fun.
But Wendell Wildcat Cooley, who's from Milton and actually had a pretty high level wrestling career.
Wow.
He's involved with that operation. Met him. I met him out of the track earlier this week, and it's his band. So, it's going to be, pretty cool. I think I'm excited about it. My 11-year-old son's excited about it. So it's going to be pretty cool. But then again, it's about the racing. All right. We're going to have a real show. There's not going to be any staged wrestling stuff involved with the actual racing.
Right.
And then Saturday will be a regular show. It'll be 12,000 to win and supers and then
how many laps are y'all doing?
I think Friday night's a 30-lap feature and Saturday will be 50.
Nice.
So, but the series, we've been really fortunate this year. Got some big names on the series. Jimmy Owens. I mean, he's one of the biggest. Obviously, he's on the backside of his career, but I mean, he's still as competitive.
He's still Jimmy Owens.
Oh yeah. He's still winning a lot of races. He ran second at World Outlaws race at Talladega earlier this year. He's
leading y'all's points.
He's
right
leading
now,
the points. Yeah. Yep. He's but it's close. You got I think Zach Mitchell's second. I think 14 points behind him. Corey Hedgecock is third, and then Joseph's fourth. And really those four, I think Joseph's 58 points out in fourth, and those four we have 4 races left. Those 4 have a shot at it. Dalton Cook's fifth, and he's a little farther back. He could have a shot, but it'd be really tough. But one of those 4, I think, are going to win it. And like I said, we got these 2 races at Southern, and then 2 weeks later we go to Cherokee for the Blue Gray 100 weekend to finish it up with 2 races there. So it's really tight points battle and a lot coming down to it. And like I said, it's pretty cool that our home track's going to get to have play a big part of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's a $50,000 championship. Like that's been the big thing. Not our first year. First year we only paid $20,000 to the champion, but the champion R series gets $50,000, and that's huge.
That's
like
big.
it's more than double any other regional series, dirt late model series. I mean, the national tours have gotten where they're paying like $250,000 or some crazy number, but like just a few years ago, I think 2021, Tim McCready won the Lucas Oil Series and it paid $75,000.
Damn.
So we're not far, far off that.
That's awesome.
And it's
it's going to continue to grow.
Yeah. Hopefully.
Matt, speaking of that, what is and we'll kind of end the show here. Where is the future of Hunt the Front? I mean, where is sky the limit? I mean, what's your future plans?
Well, I mean, I'd like to think we still got a lot of room for growth and, continue doing what we're doing. There's a lot of, we're kind of in the race team, Joseph's thinking about maybe doing a national tour next year. Got another team he could be kind of partnering with, JCM. motorsports, and that's something we've talked about for a while, and he might pursue that. That will kind of change. Obviously, he won't be able to do that and run the Hunt the Front series full time. So that's going to kind of a, I don't know, uncharted territory if that happens. Still some details put together there, and may not, it may not happen, but so it's kind of two different things. The race team and the YouTube channel is going to keep doing its thing, but for us, I really hope we can continue to build and be the Hunt the Front TV and Hunt the Front Super Dirt series, and really be a benefactor to the regional level of our sport. Right. When Flo did a really good job, kind of propping up the regional level, because it is really hard for that. The national level is doing great. The World 100 at Eldora just had a sellout crowd. Like I was in the pit area on Saturday. You could move around.
I seen the picture of the ticket booth that said sold out.
It's over 30,000 total people there. The Dome gets over 30,000 total people in December every year. The national tours are getting big crowds and doing, for the most part, doing well. But there's a big gap between the national top level of the sport and, the regional level, and certainly the weekly level. And I wish I could help the weekly level, but for us, I feel like we can really be a positive influence on the regional level, use our audience that we built on YouTube and social media to drive interest in the regional level of the sport and continue to bring revenue to that level of the sport through streaming. We've done that for 3 years. It's our third year now in the South, and we've started to branch out. We partnered with the Northern All-Star Series this year and have done a lot of their streaming. We're talking with a couple other series in the Midwest about kind of branching out in that direction and seeing if we can apply that same model to other regions and really be kind of, like I said, you got Dirt Vision where you can watch the World of Outlaws, late models, and sprint cars, and Summer Nationals, all the stuff they do. They do a great job. On Flow, you can watch the High Limit series and the Lucas Oil series and a couple of the regional series. But what I want is for Hunt the Front TV to become the home for the regional racing, right? It'd be
awesome if y'all could have like an East and a West or something.
We talked about that, and like I said, kind of that was the idea of getting involved with James Essex and the Northern All Stars. We did some co-sanctioned races. Went to Florence Speedway this year and in Kentucky. That was really cool. Florence is kind of, there's Eldora and then there's Florence. Home of the North South 100, which is one of the traditional crown jewels, and we got to have a race there. It was on a Lucas off weekend, so we got Devin Moran won it, and had a lot of the Lucas guys there. It was really cool. But yeah, that we've that's something we've toyed with, that idea of like having a North and South, and then having somehow crowning a national champion, right?
That would be awesome.
Or East West, whatever. There's just a lot that goes into it. That could really change the
game for y'all, though.
It could, and that's something, again, I have a lot of big ideas.
Yeah.
And I wish I could tell them all to you, but then when they don't happen, I look like a dummy. But
there's a lot to make stuff happen.
It's really cool. Like, I grew up in the sport, came up in it, and the media side, a lot of times thinking, well, why do they do this? Why do they do it? Why don't we do this? Why don't we have this? And that's how the series came about. And the streaming company was, I remember being at Eldora one year on after the races, talking with Michael Rigsby, like, I really wish we had a better series in the South. And he's like, why don't you go do it? We did. That's my goal, is when we see something that would be really cool and really beneficial for the sport, I want to be able to pursue it. And so far that's worked for us. We've been able to build a business behind it, make a living. It's what we do, full time. Joseph with the racing, Jonathan with the YouTube, and me with the streaming and the series side of it. And we have a lot of them, some employees that get to do it full time because of that we built. And I feel like we have a lot of good races because of what we built, and hopefully we can just keep that moving forward.
That'd be awesome. Would y'all ever consider, and this is just, my own personal deal, but would y'all ever consider like having a touring modified series tour with you? You know what I mean? That would be cool.
It would be. What's funny is that Northern All Stars has the companion Northern All Stars modified series. The problem is with modifieds is there's, like we have IMCA down here. You have the Crate USA deal, which is like more like a B mod, but in other areas. And then you have the open mods. If y'all could get, your deal a little more, the mods could get a little more.
We could figure out what we wanted to run.
Right. And everyone get on the same page. Absolutely. But it'd just be too hard to have something like you're so pocketed with the mods. And it's the same way with a lot of the, different divisions. It could be one way at one track and another way at another. That would be really hard to do.
The late models, they've kind of got all on the same page.
Everything's on the same rule book. And don't get me started on tires, but we had everyone on the same tire rule until recently. And I'd really like to not go back down that road of having, 20 different tire compounds available. But other than the tires, it's pretty much the same rule set across the board. And that makes it where you can race a late model, here in Florida or go to Wisconsin and pretty much, if it's a super late model race, what you're running, and you can bring the same package there. So get the modifieds on that and we'll see.
I may try to start working on that, but well, man, we certainly appreciate you being here today. And, man, did we miss anything that we need to cover?
No, I just, I'm really excited about the race at Southern. It's going to be a big event and a fun event, I think, with the wrestling thing and the concert, but it's going to be one of the best fields of super late models we've seen at Southern Raceway. We've been fortunate to get a really good following of core group of drivers. Like I said, with those guys in the points, and we got some good rookies and guys farther back. We got 12 guys still on the series full time. Plus, you're going to have guys, dropping in from other regions. The Mississippi guys, the guys that don't run our series full time. It should be a good show. Hopefully, I hear the same rumors everyone does about how much longer tracks are going to be around. But all I know is we're about to have a really big show at Southern Raceway, and I hope folks come out and support it.
Man, we certainly appreciate you coming today. We appreciate y'all's partnership.
Yeah.
It's been fun advertising for y'all and having y'all on. I look forward to interviewing the whole Joyner clan, and it's going to be a good time.
And I just want to say I really, think you guys are doing a great job and really cool. Like we said before we started, to hear some of the stories.
Yeah.
All the, the guys, that y'all have had on here and listening to them and getting to relive some of those stories were stories that needed to be told. And I'm glad y'all are doing it. So
thank you. It means a lot.
We just want to tell the stories before the people can't tell their own story.
Absolutely. That's cool.
Well, Jake, what else you got, bud?
Yeah, just going to reiterate here. We've been talking about it. September the 26th and the 27th. You need to come out to Southern. Come see the Hunt the Front Super Dirt Series. Going to be something never really seen around here before. Highest payout at Southern. Also thank our other partners here: Blackwater Bookkeeping, More Site Solutions, Window World, and Levada Burroughs Century 21.
Well, man, that is episode number 35 in the books.
This has been a production of the Short Track Media Group, LLC. Any unauthorized recording, reproduction, or distribution without express written consent from the Short Track Media Group, LLC is strictly prohibited and will result in legal action.